Welcome back to Reading with Mo. I'm going to be sharing with you guys today everything that I read in the month of March. I had very ambitious reading plans for the month of March. I tried to be somewhat tame in my expectations with myself because I knew March was just like a crazy busy month, and I'm glad that I even have these books to share with you guys. I think pretty much everything I read last month was audiobooks or listened to as audiobooks almost, and of this 8 books that I'm going to be talking about, 2 of them I actually didn't finish. I decided, as I will explain as I get to them, to not finish a couple of books that I started last month. So yeah, 6 books I finished, 2 DNFs, so let's just get straight into them. Go ahead and talk about the books that I actually didn't even finish first. So the first one was actually a reread. I'm trying to make my way through all the series that I have on these shelves here, and the series that I have DNF'd is Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. This is a young adult's, okay, I'm gonna forget what the specific name of this genre is. I believe it's like alternative history. Like I said, this is a reread for me. I was rereading it so that I could, it's part of a duology. So the second book is Deathless Divide. This has been sitting on my shelves for a while, but it had been so long since I read Dread Nation, I felt like I needed to reread this before I could go into the second one. So looking at it, I gave it a 3-star rating the first time I read it. The first time I read this book was actually, it was about 4 years ago, back in 2018, and I gave it a 3-star rating, but so I didn't know if going into a reread of this was going to be successful for me or not. So I made it halfway through the audiobook before I decided to put it down. I just wasn't really enjoying it that much. It was like a little bit boring to me. I just wasn't really heavily invested or interested in the characters or what was going on. We were following our main character. Her name's Jane, and she was born 2 days before the dead began to walk the battlefields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So this is kind of like a reinvention of the Civil War, but adding in zombies. I just thought it was okay. I probably shouldn't have given it another chance just because I did rate it 3 stars already the first time I finished it, but I did want to give it another chance and see if I enjoyed it or would maybe enjoy it more on a reread, and the answer for that was no. And so I'm going to be unhauling both of these because, I mean, I'm not going to read Deathless Divide since I wasn't even really vibing well with the first one. I feel like maybe I'm just not the intended audience for this. I'm not a young adult reader anymore, and so it's not a lot of young adult books that really grab my attention lately. So yeah, these ones just, I feel like, just weren't made for me, and that's fine. The other book that I decided to permanently put down was actually a new release that came out, I think it was last month, and that is Hourglass by Kieran Goddard. This book, I was already kind of like 50-50 going into it if I was going to enjoy it or not. The synopsis was very vague, but I wanted to give it a try. I liked the cover. It sounded like it could be interesting. I made it about 14% into the ebook that I checked out from my Libby app, and I just decided like I could have pushed through. It was a very short book. I think it was only like 100 pages or something. I just wasn't really enjoying it. I just didn't really feel like I could have made myself finish and probably maybe rated it like a 3-star rating, but at the time I was just like, I'd rather move on to something that I would enjoy a bit more. And then looking at the rating on Goodreads, it looks like its average rating right now is about 3.11 stars, so I feel like I made a good call on that one. Not really many people have rated it. There's only about 35 ratings on Goodreads, so I was taking a little bit of a risk with this pretty much unknown book. It was definitely something that leaned more towards the like experimental weird side of writing. I can't even tell you now what it was exactly about because, like I said, I only got like 14% into the book, but I just wasn't enjoying it, and I decided I was just going to put it down and pick up something that I was enjoying more. So now I can share with you guys the 6 books that I actually finished in the month. So I'll go ahead and show the first one that actually, the only other one that I have a physical copy of, and that is Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is a classic. I read previously North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, and I really enjoyed that book. I ended up giving this one a 4-star rating, and I liked it, but I do believe I might like North and South better. In this book, we are following our main character. Her name is Molly, and we are following her as well as like kind of a tight-knit little community that lives in England, and I believe it takes place in like the 1800s. This is a book, I think I might have started reading this in February and then I ended up finishing it in March. The main like plot of the story is that we're following our main character Molly. She is 17 years old through like the majority of the book, although in the beginning we do go back to a bit of her younger years, and we're following her and her relationship with her father, who is a widow and who eventually gets remarried, and we follow the characters of her stepmother and eventually her stepsister. Her and her stepsister are very different, and we follow their mostly her stepsister's romantic life. It was a very interesting book. I feel like it took me so long to get through though. I don't know why. I feel like I flew through North and South, but this one, maybe it was just like because I was so busy and had a lot going on. And this book I read physically as well, and I hardly ever have time now to just sit down and read a book physically, so that took me a long time. Plus it is a long book. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this is a long book. It's almost 800 pages, so it's, I mean, this is one that is just chunky, and no matter what was going to take me a while to get through. I think I actually did have a copy of the audiobook. I might have listened along with it a bit, but for the most part, I was reading this one physically. The book, actually, I didn't know before going into it, was actually never completed. I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this was Elizabeth Gaskell's last book that she wrote, and the book is almost nearly complete. Like, you could tell there was maybe like another couple chapters that could have happened at the end to wrap things up a bit more, but by the end of the book you have a general idea of what's about to happen, so even though we don't have those chapters, it's not like there's some huge cliffhanger or mystery. I find the character of her stepmother, Molly's stepmother, very interesting. Like, I did not like her, and I don't know, when we're first introduced to her character, I couldn't tell if we're supposed to like her or not. Like, at first I felt like we were, but then as the book goes on and seeing how she is as a person, like, it's not like she's like an evil stepmother. Like, her intentions can be okay, but it's just like her as a character, she's so annoying. I feel like you'll enjoy this book if you enjoy reading about stories set in the English countryside, just following like families and small town politics kind of, but in that type of Victorian setting. I definitely will continue to pick up more books by Elizabeth Gaskell in the future. I always feel so accomplished when I actually read like a chunky classic, and this is one that I've been meaning to get to for forever, so I'm finally glad that I got to this one. So then there's 5 other books I wanted to share with you guys that I don't own physical copies of. I believe all of these I was able to I checked out from my library as audiobooks and was able to listen to throughout the month. We can go ahead and start with Conspirator by Veronica Roth. These are all new releases, I think most of them, by the way, as in like 2023 releases. This book I ended up giving a 2-star rating. I probably should have DNF'd it, but it was such a short audiobook. This is a novella. I think the audiobook itself was like 3 hours or something, that I wanted to just go ahead and finish the whole thing. If you're not familiar with Veronica Roth, you probably may be familiar with her. Actually, without knowing, she wrote the Divergent series. This is a book that I think is marketed towards adults, but it very much read like a young adult book. Like, I couldn't tell what it was trying to be. And similar to the Divergent series, this takes place in a dystopian setting. This book is a reimagining of the mythology of Antigone. The setting for this book is it takes place on the last city on Earth, and the planet is a wasteland. There's this thing called the archive, and that's where the genes of the dead humanity are stored, or of the dead are stored, so that humanity won't end. Our main character Antigone, her parents are murdered, and her father, I guess, was like the one who's on the throne, and passing into this archive should be something for celebration, but her uncle Creon is the one who is like this military guy, and he ends up claiming her father's throne. I feel like maybe if I was more familiar with the story of Antigone, I would have enjoyed it more, but for me it just felt kind of weird. Like, I didn't really know what was going on with this story. it just really was not that interesting. None of the characters were really interesting. They felt very flat to me. I personally just didn't really enjoy it, so I would not recommend this novella. Next, I read a very popular book here on BookTube, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. I was so curious going into this book to see if it was something that I was going to love or hate. I know that it is very well loved by a lot of people, but also it's kind of one of those things where people tend to be one way or the other, and I actually was kind of middle of the road. I ended up giving this book a 3-star rating. I really was hoping that I was going to love it. I decided I was going to listen to the audiobook before I purchased the physical copy in case I didn't really care for it too much, and I think that was good because I just don't know if I see myself ever rereading it, or if I ever do, I'll probably just recheck out the audiobook from my library. I feel like I kind of liked the beginning a bit more and then the end. Now that it's been like a month, I'm trying to remember my specific thoughts on this. We are following our main character. Her name is Samantha, and she is a student at New England's Warren University. She is in this MFA program with a group of other girls, and they all call each other Bunny, and they kind of have this like clique slash cult type thing going on. The book is divided into different parts, and we see her interactions with this group. I mean, obviously I don't want to give away too much, but she does end up getting involved with these group of girls, and then like a lot of just weird stuff happens. Like, I thought that I would enjoy it a bit more than I did, honestly. I don't think it's a bad book. It's just not a book that I feel like quite lived up to the hype that is surrounding it. It's a weird book, and it's kind of one where at the end I'm like, okay, now I want someone like to explain like the meaning of everything that happened in this book to me, so that I can get it. I do feel like eventually though, upon thinking about things a little bit more, I do feel like this is a book I may eventually reread again, just to see if I enjoy it more on a reread. I kind of want to read like a physical copy and see if I enjoy it more than when I just listen to it on the audiobook, but we'll see. It's not a priority, it's just something I'll maybe do again in the future if I want to revisit this story. Then we have a nonfiction book called All the Beauty in the World, The Metropolitan Museum of Art and Me by Patrick Bringley, and in this book we are following the story of Patrick, who is a former Metropolitan Museum of Art security guard. I thought it was very interesting. We kind of learned some back history on the museum itself, as well as our main character, the memoir's author. With this book also was hoping to enjoy it a little bit more than I did. I ended up giving it about 3-star rating. Like, it was okay. I didn't really learn anything that was mind-blowing to me. I don't know what exactly I was looking for, honestly, going into this book, but I did hope to be a little bit more entertained. I just didn't find myself feeling like it was that interesting, and that it's probably not a nonfiction book that I would highly recommend. I felt that because he has access to a lot of things that the public doesn't normally have access to, and that the story is revolving around an art gallery, I just felt like I was going to enjoy it. I thought I was going to enjoy it more than I did. Then I listened to the audiobook for The House of Eve by Sadika Johnson. I had read Sadika's previous novel, The Yellow Wife, before and enjoyed that, so I was interested in picking up another book from the same author. I ended up giving this book a 4-star rating at the time, but I feel like it's maybe more so like a 3.5, 3.75. I just don't feel like it's super memorable and going to stick with me a long time, but I definitely did enjoy it as I was listening to it. I thought the story was pretty interesting. It takes place in the 50s in Philadelphia. And in Washington, we're following 2 different storylines. In the first storyline, we're following a 15-year-old girl. Her name is Ruby, and she's trying to be the first person in her family to go to college, but she has a situation that happens that can take her off that track. The second storyline takes place in Washington, D.C., and we are following Elizabeth Quarles, who has moved to Washington, D.C. She has ambition, but she also has some secrets that she's keeping. She ends up falling in love with this guy whose family comes from one of DC's like most wealthiest elite Black family. She hopes that by them having a kid together, that this will kind of like help his family to accept her, because she definitely doesn't come from money or a family that has like a lot of that's elite or prestigious. The book was definitely very easy to listen to. While some of it was a little bit predictable, I did enjoy my time reading it, and I do enjoy Sadiqa Johnson's writing, so I feel like I'll still pick up another book by this author, even though this one, like I said, was a kind of like a 3.5-star rating. Like, it wasn't bad. It was definitely entertaining, and I will be, like I said, picking up another book by this author when she releases another one. So I'm always lying to you guys, and there's actually 9 books that I attempted to read last month. There were 7 that I actually did finish, so there's 2 more I'm going to share with you guys. Both of them are nonfiction. I actually didn't realize it, but looking back, I think this is the most nonfiction books I've read in 1 month in a while. The next one is another new release, and that was A Mystery of Mysteries, The Death and Life of Edgar Allan Poe by Mark Dawidziak. I probably said that very wrong. I ended up giving this nonfiction book a 4-star rating. I really enjoyed it. I really knew nothing about Edgar Allan Poe, and his life was just so very interesting. This is a book I definitely see myself revisiting again in the future. I want to purchase a physical copy so that I can keep it on my shelves. I have read quite a good amount of Edgar Allan Poe's works before without really knowing much about him as an author personally. And yeah, I just never realized how interesting his life was, and it was just interesting to look at it through the lens of like how he died, and how I didn't realize how many people like really speculate because they don't know for sure how he died. There's like all these different theories. I just felt like that was all very interesting to read. I enjoyed the writing. It was very easy to listen to. After reading it, I definitely felt inspired to want to pick up some more of Edgar Allan Poe's works and read more of his books, so I definitely will probably be adding some more of his stuff into my TBR very soon. Then lastly, we have another memoir, and that one was The Love You Save by Goldie Taylor. When it comes to rating memoirs, I'm very iffy. Like, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So this is one that I just didn't really feel comfortable with rating, but it was definitely good, and I would recommend it to you guys for sure. It was very short and easy to listen to, although there are some definitely harder subject matters that the book tackles. Specifically, I would say for a trigger warning for childhood sexual abuse. The author is telling the story of her life growing up in specifically in the 70s in a neighborhood in the East St. Louis area. Reading about everything that Goldie has gone through in her life, like, she definitely has gone through so much stuff. It was a powerful story to listen to. We're following her as a young Black girl growing up, dealing with so many hard circumstances in life, and especially with her mom, like, not really being there for her like her mom should have been. Despite a lot of the trauma that she experienced as a kid, she was able to overcome that and not let that be the only thing that defines her. And the journey that she goes on to, even just like her love of reading, was very inspiring to read about. And all in all, I feel like if you're into memoirs, this is one that I would recommend for you to pick up. So those are all of the books that I was able to get to in the month of March. Overall, I'm still glad with the amount of books. I will say probably Wives and Daughters is the one I'm most proud of actually finishing, because that book was so long. But I am very excited to see how my April reading goes. If you guys want to check out my TBR, I posted that last week, so you can kind of get a sneak peek into the books I will be reviewing for the month of April. Other than that, let me know if you guys had any standout reads last month, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!